For another reason. One of his men put his arm over his face and couldn't help but cry. Meanwhile, on the other side, Soryang's jaw dropped upon seeing that Peng Muin had lost a tooth. Peng Muin's men began to hit themselves in the face because despite being there, they had failed to prevent the young woman from collapsing, admitting that their sin was also great. The patriarch's eyes widened in surprise, and his jaw dropped. He reached out to them and asked them to calm down, while on the other side, Peng Muin began to smile. More teeth started flying out. With a worried gaze, Huiyan approached Soryang and asked what they should do. Our boy put his hand behind his head and, with a sincere expression, mentioned that there was a way. He clasped his hands together and began shouting, asking them to calm down. Upon hearing our boy's voice, the men whose faces were covered in bruises stopped hitting themselves abruptly, and their attention turned to Soryang. Showing a finger and a confident smile, he revealed that there was a way to identify the cause of her symptoms and prove that no one here was guilty beyond all doubt. The attention of Peng Muin and the patriarch fixed on Soryang, and their eyes widened with curiosity. Soryang sat next to him and began to stare at him intently. Seeing this, Peng Muin's eyes widened in surprise. With a cold gaze, Soryang explained that first they had to remove Miss Peng Yingying's clothes. Upon hearing this, both the patriarch and Huiyan were petrified. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Peng Muin's eyes began to shine with rage. The patriarch was in shock upon hearing Soryang, while on the other side, Peng Muin's eyes widened in confusion and surprise. He asked what Soryang had just said. Our boy's eyes widened in surprise and curiosity upon seeing their expression. This was a reaction he did not expect. Soryang mentioned again that they should take all of Yingying's clothes off, but just before he could finish the sentence, Peng Muin grabbed him tightly by the collar. Our boy couldn't help but feel afraid. Upon seeing that he wanted to undress his daughter, Peng Muin's eyes began to shine with rage. Soryang's eyes widened in panic. He opened his mouth and panicked, asking him to wait a moment. Just then, one of the small centipedes emerged from Soryang's clothing and its gaze fixed on Peng Muin. Soryang realized that the little one was ready to attack, so without wasting a second, he ordered it to hide again. Little by little, Peng Muin began to lose his composure, and Soryang soon realized that this was not good at all. The patriarch's eyes filled with fear. He panicked, asking him to calm down and explaining that his son-in-law must have had a reason for saying such things. Huiyan, who was sitting next to him, extended her hands and with a nervous expression asked Lord Peng to please at least listen to what Soryang wanted to say first. He grabbed the poor Soryang by the collar even more tightly. Our boy closed his eyes and began to show a forced smile. Peng Muin started staring at him with a gaze full of rage, not knowing what to do. Despite being in panic, Huiyan began to show a smile, explaining that Soryang was a good person. After going around the matter several times, Peng Muin let go of Soryang. Our boy had dared to suggest stripping his daughter, who had not yet reached her prime, so he decided to listen to any justification that Soryang could offer. Our boy opened his mouth and began gasping heavily, feeling somewhat relieved. He sat on the floor in front of Peng Muin and with a serious tone asked him to please calm down and listen until the end. Peng Muin crossed his arms and closed his eyes, deciding to trust him. Showing a finger and a sincere expression, Soryang explained that what he meant was to take off all of Lady Peng's clothes and change her into something else, as it was possible that something in her clothing or personal belongings was the cause of her collapse. Upon hearing this, Peng Muin's eyes widened in surprise and his jaw dropped. He was in shock, realizing that he had misunderstood Soryang. He lowered his gaze, clenched his fist tightly, and prepared to hit himself again for having doubted the words of our boy. Soryang's eyes widened in fear, making him panic. He began to shake his hand, asking him to calm down. He was sure that his daughter's sudden collapse must have left him shocked. With a kind smile, Patriarch Peng thanked our boy from the bottom of his heart for being able to understand someone else's mistake. Soryang began to stare at Peng Muin and with a serious expression explained that from now on, the young lady of the Peng clan was going to be under the care of the Tang clan, and until further notice, all contact with the Peng clan was going to be restricted. Upon hearing this, the Patriarch and Huiyan were somewhat surprised. Peng Muin began to point at himself with his finger and with a confused gaze asked if he also. Soryang's eyes began to shine with confidence and with a smile nodded his head, since if his daughter experienced the same symptoms under their care, then it would be proven that the cause was not related to the Peng clan. This was the method called controlled environmental adjustment, a technique commonly used by breeders who raised poisonous insects, snakes, and amphibians. In his past life, one day he took his little chameleon out of the terrarium. The little chameleon tried to converse with our boy by asking if he could add some vitamin D to the food. Soryong's eyes expanded in confusion, leaving him in shock. If only the creatures they cared for could tell them this part hurts, things would be much simpler. But there was no way since humans could not communicate with them directly. That's why they systematically changed aspects of their environment, such as habitat and food, to identify what was making the creature feel sick. Back in the present, Ying, who had collapsed, had a red face and was breathing heavily. Soryong planned to use this method to diagnose her. He wanted to completely reset her environment and gradually reintroduce elements to identify the trigger since they couldn't just sit and let her keep collapsing without knowing why. The patriarch began to touch his beard and with a curious expression realized that Soryong was right since, with some time, they would be able to discover the cause of her condition. He could not help but praise his son-in-law for having such a good idea. Soryong's eyes widened in nervousness, making him panic, while on the other hand, Huyen closed her eyes and felt relieved. Peng Muin understood Soryong's plan, and his body began to tremble. He hugged his daughter and, with tears in his eyes, asked Soryong to please take good care of her. Our boy's eyes began to shine with confidence. He placed his hand over his chest and, with a smile, asked him to trust him. What no one knew was that he had raised countless creatures, and a little girl was nothing in comparison. The next day, little Ying woke up and her eyes filled with tears. This was not going to be as easy as Soryong had hoped. Ying started crying, and upon seeing this, our boy panicked, not knowing what to do. Ying started crying even more. Soryong put his hands on top of his head and his eyes widened in confusion since the moment she had regained consciousness, she had begun to cry. Meanwhile, Lady Huyen and Soryong's mother-in-law were outside gathering essential supplies to care for Ying, so Soryong was left alone with an unpredictable little child. He approached the bed and with a confused expression asked if she was sleepy or hungry. He didn't know what to do. Several minutes passed and Ying did not stop crying. Soryong put his hands together and with a confused smile asked if she was crying because Lord Peng was not here. Pointing outside, he explained that her father had gone to get medicine for her, promising that he would return soon. Still with tears in her eyes, Ying puffed up her cheeks and said that she wanted sweets. Our boy started sweating in surprise upon seeing that she was crying because she wanted sweets, and not because her father was not here. Ying started crying even more since all her sweets were gone and now she was all alone. Soryong remembered that when Huyen had changed her clothes, she had discovered that she had a lot of hidden pockets just for sweets, leaving her somewhat surprised. With a kind smile, he asked her to calm down, explaining that she had just woken up after collapsing so she shouldn't eat sweets right now, advising that for now, she should eat some rice porridge since later he was going to make some sweets for her. Upon hearing this, she stopped crying and with a surprised expression asked if he was really going to make sweets for her. Soryong began to show one finger and explained that if Lady Peng ate her porridge well and was obedient, he would make candied fruit skewers just for her. The little girl's eyes widened in surprise. She closed her eyes and with a tender smile decided to make a promise with him. She clenched her fist and with a smile revealed that the Peng clan always kept its promises. If she broke hers, he could hit her in the face. Soryong lowered his head and couldn't help but feel somewhat disappointed, not knowing why the damn Peng clan taught these kinds of things to children. It was daytime and the sky was clear. Somewhere in the manor, Peng Muin was hiding among the bushes. His eyes were full of seriousness as lately he had been burdened with worry. Ying, who was playing with one of the bees, and Huyen passed in front of him. Peng Muin's eyes filled with tears as he could only see Ying from afar. You see, due to the rule of no contact with the Peng clan, he could not see his daughter. Soryong's attention was fixed on him. He put his hand over his mouth and with a confused expression asked what he was doing here. Upon hearing our boy's voice, Peng Muin went on alert, and without wasting a second, grabbed Soryong and pulled him into the bushes. With a worried gaze, he asked how Ying was doing. Soryong's eyes, as he lay on the ground, widened in confusion. He sat in front of the patriarch and mentioned that she was eating well and was obedient. Upon hearing that she was eating well, the patriarch's jaw dropped in surprise. Our boy revealed that she had devoured an entire plate of fried pork. Peng Muin was in shock, not knowing how Soryong had made her eat, to which he responded that she had eaten it by herself. Peng Muin's eyes widened in surprise and confusion. Just then, someone wearing a red dress appeared. Their attention was fixed on it, and their eyes expanded in surprise. It was Huyen. With a kind smile, she greeted the lord of the Peng clan with respect. In response, with a grateful smile, Peng Muin thanked her for taking care of his daughter. With a calm gaze, she mentioned that Ying was asking where older brother Soryong had gone. Upon hearing older brother, Peng Muin couldn't help but feel furious, while on the other hand, Soryong was somewhat confused. Peng Muen's eyes began to shine with rage since not even he had had a proper conversation with her, without knowing when they had become so close. Seeing his expression, our boy's jaw dropped in fear. Peng Muen exploded with fury, wanting to know since when she had started calling him older brother. Soryong clenched his teeth and without wasting another second, ran out of the place. Peng Muen put his hands on top of his head and started going crazy. Huyen turned towards him and with a cheerful smile asked if he was heading to the training grounds again. Our boy explained to her that after playing a little with the golden-haired king bees, Ying was more obedient. Soryong started running towards the training grounds, realizing that the golden-haired king bees also felt affection for Ying. A few minutes later, he arrived at the training grounds where little Ying was playing with one of the bees. She held the bee in her arms and with a cheerful smile greeted our boy. Ying started playing with the bee and then more bees began to arrive. One of them climbed onto her head and another started licking her cheek. She couldn't help but smile as she felt ticklish. Soryong's attention, who had his arms crossed, was fixed on her, and a smile appeared on his face since thanks to these little creatures, he had been able to bond with Ying very quickly. One of the bees climbed onto his head, and our boy's eyes began to shine with seriousness, realizing that the adorable golden-haired king bees loved Ying because she had spilled sugar syrup on herself while eating sweets, not knowing if they were mistaking her for food. Ying knew that the bees liked her, so now she threw a tantrum every day, demanding to visit them. Just then, the queen bee emerged from the tree. Ying, who was playing with the bees, turned towards Soryong, started pointing at the tree and with a smile said that the queen bee was there. Soryong sat on the bench and asked Ying not to ask the queen bee to play since she was busy. In response, she closed her eyes and nodded her head. Soryong felt happy thinking that if he had a younger sister, he would feel like this, realizing that taking care of children was not so bad. Ying raised her hand and called his attention, saying that there was another bee. Upon hearing this, our boy's eyes widened in surprise. He brought his hand to his mouth and with a worried gaze asked her to be careful since some bees stung. Just then, she started screaming as she had been stung. Soryong panicked and started running towards her, asking if she was okay. She had a small sting on her arm. With a worried gaze, our boy explained that she should be careful. He decided to leave the matter aside and go first to the medicine hall. Little Ying began to observe the sting, saying that it didn't look so bad. Soryong grabbed her hand and decided to apply some medicine just in case since sometimes bee venom could make people very sick. Ying closed her eyes and with a sad expression nodded her head. Just then, Soryong's eyes widened in surprise. Little by little Ying began to gasp heavily and her face started turning red. She started to feel cold and not long after, she collapsed. Soryong reacted in time, and just before her body could hit the ground, he caught her. His eyes widened in fear as he began to remember what Peng Muen had said. Sometimes her breathing became difficult, and large red welts appeared on her body, and in more severe cases, she even lost consciousness. Finally, he realized exactly what this reaction was. With a furious gaze, he clenched his teeth upon realizing that the pure reason Ying had been collapsing all this time was due to anaphylactic shock. More precisely, anaphylaxis.
If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, and like the video. Thank you.